Hey, adrenaline junkies! Break the mold and push your limits because today we're hacking the timeline and diving into the insane madness of the Third Reich. Yep, you heard that right. We're about to delve into the cool stuff they cooked up to twist history in their favor. When we talk about madness, we've got to remember they're flying beasts. I'm talking about airplanes that defy gravity. Can you imagine machines the size of modern skyscrapers? And of course, let's not forget about those tank giants that simply dominate the landscape. This isn't just machinery, it's pure engineering artistry. Now hold on tight, because I'm taking you into the realm of true insanity. These aren't just paper projects, they're real slices of history that'll have you on the edge of your seat. And finally, I've saved the grand finale for you. A setup that creates the craziest tornadoes. Get ready for a wild ride through the world of historical excess. Subscribe, get into the action because that's how we conquer this insane world. Dare and prove that your adrenaline thirst knows no bounds. On August 16, 1944, Nazi Germany rocked the aviation world by unveiling the prototype of the jet-powered bomber Ju-287, crafted by the ingenious minds at Junkers. This aircraft was in a league of its own. With its swept-back wings and 4 jet engines, the Ju-287 was a marvel of engineering, boasting an impressive speed of nearly 600 kilometers per h. Talk about breaking boundaries. Its engines were strategically positioned on both sides of the nose and along the wings, giving it an edge in speed and maneuverability. This badass prototype completed 17 test flights, showcasing stellar performance. But alas, due to grim circumstances on the war fronts by 1945, Germany couldn't realize its potential. Production delays sealed its fate, and the prototype fell prey to Allied bombers. Those in production found their way into the hands of the USSR. But here's the kicker. The Ju-287 was a true Frankenstein's monster, pieced together from parts of other aircraft. It was a masterpiece of assembly. Its inverted wings were taken from older models, its chassis from the American B-24, and its tail from the U-388 and U-352. There was even a wild variant called the Mistel, where the Ju-287 transformed into an unmanned bomb, guided by the Me-262 fighter. Talk about extreme fantasy. Fortunately, these bold ideas remained on paper. But that's just a fraction of the adrenaline-fueled roller coaster that was World War II aviation. Stay tuned for more gripping stories from the history books. Check out this little guy, the FL-282 Hummingbird. A legendary German-made helicopter from the World War II era, it was a potent mix of innovation and technical prowess from the Third Reich. Developed with the needs of aerial reconnaissance in mind, this two-seater had a unique observer position, making it perfect for spy missions without sacrificing stability and maneuverability. The design of the Hummingbird was truly impressive. With its centrally placed Brahmo 314A engine providing excellent visibility and efficient cooling through the open lower fuselage, coupled with 2 synchronized propellers, it was a breakthrough for Letov. These propellers, with their unique angles and hinge mounts, gave the helicopter outstanding flight characteristics and agility. During wartime, the Hummingbird was used for reconnaissance missions and convoy cover, showcasing its value on the battlefield. Its application was particularly notable in the Baltic region, where it successfully took off and landed even in the most extreme conditions. This little hero showed the world what it was capable of and made its mark on military operations. Subscribe and don't miss out. Those who aren't in the loop will be left without the facts. Yo, check out the Messerschmitt Me-323 Gigant, the ultimate military transport aircraft of World War II. This bad boy was born from the minds of German engineers at Junkers and Messerschmitt, envisioned as a colossal project for hauling heavy equipment like 80mm guns, half-track vehicles, and Panzer IV medium tanks. The Gigant was the answer to the demands of the time, boasting a top speed of just 136 miles per hour and a unique design featuring 6 Gnome-Rhone GR-144N radial engines with a payload capacity of up to 15 tons. Talk about packing a punch. The Me-323 played a crucial role as a lifeline for supplying military operations across various theaters of war, from transporting equipment and ammunition to North Africa to evacuating wounded soldiers in Italy. This giant left an indelible mark on military history. But here's the kicker. Its sheer size and weight made the Me-323 vulnerable to enemy fighter attacks, like the devastating blow it suffered on April 22, 1943, when an entire squadron of 14 aircraft was wiped out. Despite these risks, production of the Me-323 continued until April of '44, providing the Third Reich with a critically vital transport resource. Now that's what I call an airborne juggernaut. Let's talk about the Zielgerät 1229 Vampire. It's a German night vision device from World War II. It was a revolutionary tool that allowed our soldiers to conduct combat operations in low visibility conditions. This device was mounted on the STG-44 rifle and, if desired, on the MG-34 and 42 machine guns. It was developed to enhance the effectiveness of German troops in night battles. The production was handled by the company Himmel, and by 1944, an experimental batch of 300 such sights had been released. The Vampire kit included the sight itself, weighing about 2.2 kilograms, a battery in a wooden case weighing 13.5 kilograms, a powered infrared projector, and an additional battery for the sight, which was stored in a gas mask bag. All these components, placed behind the soldier's back, added about 35 kilograms to their equipment weight. Despite the limited operating time of only 20 minutes and a target detection range of no more than 100 meters, the Vampire was actively used by German forces in night battles, especially towards the end of the war. This allowed our snipers to effectively fire during the dark hours by mounting these devices on their rifles, posing a threat to the enemy even in complete darkness. Let's talk about the Landkreuzer P-1500 Monster project. It was a bold endeavor by German engineers who attempted to create an ultra-heavy tank embodying the most radical ideas of military technology of its time. This project, unveiled in 1942, surpassed even its predecessor, the 1000 series, in terms of size and capabilities. The Monster was intended to be armed with a massive artillery gun, Krupp, with a caliber of 800 millimeters, capable of firing 7-ton shells up to 37 kilometers away. I'll tell you more about this colossal firepower later. Such firepower would have allowed this beast to destroy fortified structures from a safe distance. However, the implementation of such a project encountered numerous technical and logistical challenges. The power plant, which was supposed to use 4 powerful V-shaped diesel engines from submarines, only partially solved the problem of moving such a giant, as its maximum speed barely reached 20 kilometers per hour. Additionally, servicing such a machine would have required significant human resources, with over 100 crew members. But the most serious obstacles to the project's implementation were its enormous size and weight. Transporting such a monster to the battlefield seemed almost impossible. Using the Monster near the front lines would have been exceptional due to the difficulty of movement and the high risk of being destroyed by enemy aircraft. Ultimately, the project remained on paper and was canceled in early 1943. This episode in the history of military technology serves as a vivid example of how the pursuit of unmatched power can encounter insurmountable technical and practical limitations. However, on a positive note, the Germans eventually developed this massive gun themselves. Let's talk about the Dora gun. It was the pinnacle of German artillery science ambitions since World War II. Like I said, it's an 800mm railway gun developed by the Krupp Company engineers. It embodied the epitome of power and scale in artillery systems of that time. Originally conceived to demolish the French defensive line and Belgian forts, Dora was presented in response to Hitler's demand for a weapon of unprecedented destructive force. The project was led by Professor Erich Müller. Dora turned out to be more of a propaganda tool than a military weapon. The complexity of transportation and deployment, along with the massive resource costs in its creation and maintenance, made its battlefield use extremely inefficient. Ultimately, Dora was only used in a few operations, including one near Sevastopol, where it fired 48 rounds. However, it never achieved significant military impact. Let's talk about the J322 Mammoth. the largest wooden glider created during World War II. This project became one of the most ambitious in aviation history. Designed to transport heavy military equipment and personnel, this gigantic glider had a wingspan of 62 meters, which, believe me, is comparable to the width of a football field. The creation of such a massive wooden glider was driven by the German command's desire to have the capability to mass transport troops and equipment, including tanks and self-propelled guns, to the British Isles. However, during the testing phase, the Mammoth revealed a number of critical shortcomings. During a test flight, the glider experienced such resistance that it almost led to a catastrophe for the towing aircraft. The impression from the first flight was so negative that the project was immediately terminated, and the idea of using the Mammoth for military purposes was simply abandoned. The Fiesler Fi-103R, also known as the piloted version of the V-1 guided missile, became one of the most talked about and extreme projects in the history of German military aviation during World War II. This flying projectile was developed for missions similar to Japanese kamikaze attacks, namely for suicidal strikes on Allied ships, primarily aircraft carriers. A key figure in the development of the Fi-103R was Hanna Reich, Hitler's personal pilot, and one of the most famous female aviators in Germany at that time. The idea of creating a piloted bomb emerged in response to the desire to deliver a critical blow to the naval forces of the Allies and prevent the Normandy landings. Despite initial skepticism from senior Luftwaffe leadership regarding the use of pilots as live ammunition, the project was still launched. However, a series of fatal incidents during the initial test flights forced the leadership to rethink the concept and demand the installation of ejection systems to save the pilots. The modernization work took a lot of time, and by the time the project was ready for further development, the strategic situation had fundamentally changed. Subscribe and don't miss out. Those who aren't in the loop will be left without the facts. And here it is, the Faust 3, the long-range gun also known as the Millipede, the Diligent Fox, and the English gun. This project stands as one of the most ambitious and controversial developments in Third Reich artillery history. The Faust 3 concept began to take shape under the influence of Vienna Baron Gina von der Perk and was based on the preliminary work of German Oberth and Max Volley, who began exploring long-range guns back in the 1920s. The main goal of the project was to create a weapon with incredible firing range, capable of delivering projectiles over vast distances, including for use in space exploration. Inspiration came from the concept outlined by Jules Verne in his novel From the Earth to the Moon, which described the use of a giant cannon to launch people to the moon. The primary objective of Faust 3 was to destroy important strategic targets on enemy territory, including shelling London. However, the implementation of this grand project faced a number of insurmountable technical and logistical challenges. Despite attempts to improve the design of projectiles and the gun itself, achieving the required projectile velocity and firing range was never accomplished. Efforts to equip the gun with additional charge chambers to increase the initial projectile velocity resulted in explosions and structural instability. In the end, despite the colossal efforts and resources invested in the Faust 3 project, it never became a real and effective weapon on the battlefield. All right, buckle up, folks, because we're diving into the beast that is the Sturm Tiger, the monstrous German answer to the urban warfare challenges of World War II. With this bad boy, Germany aimed to dominate urban landscapes, turning any enemy stronghold into rubble. Armed with a 380mm rocket launcher and boasting a whopping 70 tons of armor, the Sturm Tiger was built on the legendary Tiger I chassis, making it one of the toughest and most powerful machines of its time. The development of this beast kicked off after the German setback at Stalingrad, where they got a taste of the brutal reality of urban combat. In scenarios where enemies could strike from any direction, and visibility and maneuverability were limited, regular tanks just weren't cutting it. The Sturm Tiger was meant to be the game changer, with the ability to obliterate fortifications and buildings with incredible precision and force. Creating such a machine wasn't just a technical challenge. It was an engineering feat of epic proportions. The Sturm Tiger was armed, as I mentioned, with a 380mm rocket launcher, initially designed for combating submarines. This weapon had a colossal caliber and could launch massive projectiles up to 5.5 kilometers away. The armor of the Sturm Tiger reached up to 15 centimeters in some areas, making it practically impervious to most anti-tank weaponry of the time. Such heavy protection was crucial for survival in the brutal close-quarters combat of urban warfare. However, despite all the technical innovations and reinforcements, the Sturm Tiger didn't exactly become a regular sight on the battlefield. Only 18 of these machines were ever built, and they saw action sporadically, without making a significant impact on the course of the war. Sure, folks, let me tell you about this remarkable armored rectangle, the A7V, the first mass-produced tank of German origin, which was the culmination of Germany's military technical developments during World War I. Named after the 7th Transport Department of the War Ministry, this giant symbolized Germany's efforts to counter Allied tanks on the battlefields of Europe. With only 20 units ever created, the A7V remained a rare and underutilized war machine, whose effectiveness was hampered both by technical shortcomings and the lack of adequate crew training. Each A7V tank was unique, bearing its own names such as Mephisto, Wotan, and Isolde, and became part of small tank units. Despite their impressive armament, including 50 mm guns and multiple MG-08 machine guns, the A7V often suffered from its bulkiness and low maneuverability, making it an easy target for enemy artillery. Nevertheless, the limited production and deployment of the A7V on the front lines did not significantly impact the course of the war, especially compared to the thousands of tanks fielded by the Allies. After the war, most of these iron monsters were lost or destroyed, with only a few surviving examples preserved in museums. Now let's talk about Dr. Mario Zeppermeyer, a prominent aerodynamics scientist who proposed an innovative concept for anti-aircraft artillery during World War II. His research focused on using vortex flows to shoot down airborne targets. The weapon's principle relied on generating powerful explosions in the combustion chamber, directed upwards through special nozzles, creating a force capable of downing even airplanes. The first prototype successfully underwent testing on a wooden target at a distance of 180 meters, demonstrating the potential of this technology. However, further tests revealed the system's limited effectiveness, as the vortices could not reach the necessary height to engage enemy aircraft. After the war, one of the anti-aircraft guns was discovered by American troops in an abandoned state in a warehouse, while the other was destroyed in the war's final days. Following Germany's surrender, Dr. Zeppermeyer chose to remain in Austria and refused to collaborate with military services in both the USA and the USSR. And that's it, folks. If you're interested in what happens next, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and see you soon, friends.